The nurse was fired for helping an injured homeless man, unaware that she had saved the richest person in the city. Elena Souza was finishing yet another night shift at the municipal hospital in San Jose when she heard screams coming from the entrance to the emergency department. It was 4 a.m. on a cold Friday, and she had just closed the last patient's chart when two security guards dragged a man in by the armpits, leaving a trail of blood on the freshly mopped floor. "Another drunk bum," muttered Mateus, the senior nurse, without even looking up from his paperwork. "Put him on the gurney at the far end and wait until morning. We're not wasting resources on people like that right now." Elena watched as they hauled the man away. He was unconscious, with deep wounds on his forehead and left arm. His clothes were dirty and torn in several places. From the wounds, it was clear he'd been brutally beaten. This wasn't just a drunken brawl. There was too much fresh blood, too many recent injuries. "Mateus, he's really hurt. Look at all the blood," Elena said, approaching the gurney where they'd laid him. "Elena, how many times do I have to tell you? We don't waste expensive supplies on vagrants. Let him sleep it off and he'll leave on his own in the morning," Mateus said irritably, turning back to his papers. But Elena couldn't ignore it. The man had a deep gash on his forehead that was bleeding profusely, and his arm was in an awkward position, possibly broken. If he wasn't examined soon, there could be serious complications. She glanced around and noticed the other nurses pretending to be too busy to get involved. "I'll at least clean the wounds and do a simple bandage," Elena said, pulling gauze and saline from the supply cabinet. "Elena, I'm warning you, don't get involved with this. The administration is watching for unnecessary expenses." Mateus raised his voice. But Elena was already at the gurney. She began gently cleaning the blood from the man's face. Under the layer of dirt and scrapes, she saw he wasn't as old as he first appeared, around 40 years old. Dark, disheveled hair, sun-tanned skin. His hands, though dirty, didn't look like those of someone who'd lived on the streets his whole life. "Elena, stop right now," Mateus shouted, drawing the attention of the other nurses. "You disobeyed a direct order. I've been a nurse for 8 years. I swore to save lives, not to pick and choose which ones are worth saving," Elena replied, continuing to treat the wounds. The argument attracted the attention of the rest of the shift workers. Isabella, a nurse who had always competed with Elena for promotions, approached with a sly smile. "Everyone, look at this. Elena's become the savior of the nation. Wasting our supplies on a bum while we slave away with real patients," Isabella said loudly for all to hear. "A patient is a patient, Isabella. Our profession doesn't discriminate by social class," Elena responded, but she felt her face flush with embarrassment under everyone's gaze. "Oh, come on, Elena. We all know you're just doing this to show off. Want to be the heroine in this story." Lucas, another nurse, chimed in with taunts. "I bet if one of your family members was waiting in line, you wouldn't want time wasted on a bum." What hurt the most was that Elena truly believed in what she was doing. She had entered medicine out of a calling, because she wanted to help people. Seeing her colleagues treat a human being like trash filled her with deep indignation. "I'm not doing this to show off. I'm doing it because it's my job," Elena said, applying antiseptic to the forehead wound. "Your job is to follow the senior nurse's orders," Isabella smirked. But Elena always thinks she's better than everyone. Arthur Montero had been conscious for several minutes but kept his eyes closed. He had woken to the raised voices and heard the entire dispute. What struck him most wasn't the insults. He'd heard worse in the past weeks living on the streets. It was the nurse's determination to defend him. He felt her hands, gentle and caring, cleaning his wounds, sensing genuine compassion in every touch. It had been a long time since anyone had touched him with such humanity, and from the voices around, he understood she was being humiliated by her colleagues because of him. "Elena, I'm giving you one last chance. Stop this circus right now, or you'll face serious consequences," Mateus said, approaching the gurney with a threatening expression. "Mateus, I'm just doing a basic bandage. I'm not asking for surgery or expensive tests, just basic humanity," Elena replied, finishing the cleaning. "Humanity? Elena, Come back to Earth. We're here to work, not play Mother Teresa." Lucas laughed, and the other nurses joined in. Arthur clenched his fists discreetly. He heard the woman who had saved his life being humiliated and mocked for doing her job with dignity. He wanted to stand up to defend her, but he knew that revealing he was conscious would only make things worse. "Look at that, folks." Elena's all touched, tending to her new boyfriend. Isabella threw out, eliciting loud laughter from the others. Elena felt tears welling up in her eyes but refused to show weakness. She finished the bandage and checked Arthur's pulse. It was normal, strong. At least there was no immediate threat to his life. Done. Everything's clean and bandaged. Now he can rest without risk of infection, Elena said, putting away the supplies. "Congratulations, Elena. You wasted 15 reis on bandaging a bum who'll be filthy again tomorrow," Mateus said sarcastically. "I hope you feel like a heroine." Elena didn't respond. She glanced once more at the man on the gurney, who now, after being cleaned and treated, looked peacefully asleep. There was something intriguing about his face, but she couldn't place it. "Elena, come here, we need to talk," Mateus called, pointing to the hallway. Elena followed the senior nurse to a more private spot, already sensing the conversation would be unpleasant. Mateus had that expression he wore when making decisions he knew were unfair but politically advantageous for him. "Elena, you disobeyed me in front of the whole team, undermined my authority, and used supplies without permission," Mateus said in an official tone. "Mateus, I just did a basic bandage. 15 reis in supplies won't bankrupt the hospital," Elena replied, trying to stay calm. "It's not just about the money, Elena. It's about hierarchy. If I let you break my orders, tomorrow everyone will think they can do whatever they want." Elena could tell from his tone that the conversation had a predetermined outcome. Mateus had made his decision before calling her. "I'm forced to issue you a written warning for insubordination and improper use of resources," Mateus said, pulling a sheet of paper from his pocket. "And depending on the administration's reaction, it could be worse." "Mateus, this is absurd. I saved an injured man's life," Elena said, but she knew she was wasting her words. "You disobeyed a direct order? In this hospital, there are consequences for that." On the gurney, Arthur heard everything. Every word of the unfair reprimand, every threatening nuance in the senior nurse's voice. The woman who had compassionately helped him was now being punished for doing the right thing. He clenched his fists harder, fighting the urge to stand and reveal who he really was. Elena signed the warning with trembling hands. Years of impeccable service tarnished by one act of humanity. It was both ironic and outrageous. When they returned to the emergency room, the other nurses looked at Elena with expressions ranging from pity to malicious satisfaction. Isabella wore that smug grin, as if she'd just scored points in the hospital's political games. "Well, Elena, was it worth playing the heroine?" Isabella asked quietly, pretending to organize patient charts. Elena didn't answer. She silently tidied her workstation, gathered her personal items, and grabbed her bag. Her shift was over, and she wanted nothing more than to leave and forget this cursed night. Before leaving, she glanced one last time at the gurney where Arthur lay. He seemed to be in a deep sleep, his breathing even, his color better after treatment. At least she'd made a difference for one person, even if it cost her dearly. "Get well," she whispered softly, thinking he couldn't hear her. But Arthur heard, and as Elena walked out the emergency door into the cold morning, he slowly opened his eyes. For the first time in weeks, there was something in his chest besides sorrow and anger. There was gratitude and determination. Elena walked to the bus stop at dawn, wrapped in her thin coat, reflecting on what had just happened. The official warning was already in her personnel file, and she knew Mateus wouldn't let it go. In the coming days, any mistake would be an excuse for something worse. She looked at her hands, still bearing traces of blood even after washing them several times. She had done the right thing, she was sure of it. But in the world she lived in, right actions seemed to come at too high a price. The bus arrived empty, as always at that hour. Elena sat by the window and rested her head against the cold glass, watching the city slowly awaken. In a few hours, She'd return for another shift, pretending nothing had happened. But something inside her had changed that night. A seed of rebellion, one she didn't yet know would sprout and completely transform her life. Arthur waited until the hospital activity died down completely before sitting up on the gurney. It was nearly 6 a.m., and only one sleepy nurse remained on duty for emergencies. He moved slowly, checking his wounds. The pain in his arm was intense, likely a fracture, but nothing life-threatening right now. He made his way to the staff bathroom, where he could see himself in the mirror for the first time since the beating. The bandage on his forehead was neat and professional. Elena had worked with care and attention, despite the humiliation from her colleagues. Arthur ran his fingers over the bandage, remembering the gentleness of her hands. Inside his torn jacket, in a plastic-protected breast pocket, was his phone. Miraculously, it had survived the chaos of the previous night. Arthur turned it on and saw dozens of missed calls, urgent messages, and work emails. His disappearance hadn't gone unnoticed. He called Tiago first, his driver and bodyguard. The phone barely rang once. "Arthur, for God's sake, where are you? We've been searching for you for 3 days." Tiago's voice was filled with relief and desperation. "Tiago, I'm at the municipal hospital in San Jose. Pick me up, but quietly. I don't want to draw attention in the hospital." "What happened? Are you hurt? I'll call a private ambulance right now." "Tiago, enough. Listen to what I'm saying. Pick me up alone. Regular car. No limousines, no scenes. And bring normal clothes." Arthur hung up before Tiago could ask more questions. He returned to the gurney and pretended to sleep, waiting for his driver. But his mind was boiling with plans. First, learn the full name of that nurse, then find out everything about her. 40 minutes later, Tiago arrived at the hospital in jeans and a t-shirt, disguised as a relative visiting a patient. Seeing Arthur, he barely restrained himself from asking questions in front of others. "Cousin, how are you?" Tiago said loudly, playing his role perfectly. "Better now that you're here," Arthur replied, slowly getting up. "Let's go home." They left the hospital, walking slowly with Arthur leaning on Tiago's arm. In the car, away from prying ears, Tiago finally unleashed the questions he'd held back. "Arthur, for God's sake, where have you been these 3 days? The company's in chaos. The executives are desperate. Your secretary nearly had a nervous breakdown." Arthur stared out the window, watching the city wake to a new day. "I was investigating something, Tiago. Personally." "What exactly? And how did you end up like this?" "Remember the anonymous messages we got about mismanagement in the public hospitals receiving our donations?" Tiago nodded. Arthur was the owner of GR Holdings, a conglomerate controlling companies in technology, construction, and investments. One of the company's hallmarks was donations to public hospitals, but lately, there had been complaints about mismanagement and corruption. "I decided to investigate personally. I disguised myself as a homeless man and spent 3 days observing the municipal hospital in San Jose," Arthur continued. "What I saw inside is far worse than we imagined." "And how did you get injured?" "Other homeless people tried to rob me last night. They beat me, but I got valuable information and met someone who will completely change our strategy." Tiago had known Arthur for 10 years and could recognize when his boss was planning something big. There was a special energy in his voice, a determination beyond business. "Who did you meet?" "A nurse named Elena. She was the only person in the entire hospital who treated me like a human being. She saved me, Tiago, and was humiliated by her colleagues for it." They arrived at Arthur's mansion in Barra de Tijuca, a sprawling estate hidden behind high walls and lush gardens. Tiago helped Arthur inside and immediately called the personal physician to examine the injuries. Dr. Felipe Almeida arrived in 20 minutes with a full medical kit. He had been the family doctor for years, accustomed to discreetly serving Rio's elite. "Arthur, for God's sake, what madness is this? Your arm is broken, and that forehead wound should have been stitched hours ago. Felipe, treat me right here. I'm not going to a private hospital now, and don't record anything officially." As the doctor splinted the arm and stitched the forehead wound, Arthur recounted his 3-day experience. What he had seen in the hospital was a reflection of all the problems in the public healthcare system. Arthur, you could have died. Investigations are for professionals, not disguised vagrants on the streets, Dr. Felipe grumbled, administering local anesthesia. If I'd sent professional detectives, they'd never have seen what I saw. They'd never have met Elena. When the doctor finished and left, Arthur called Tiago for a serious talk. They sat in the mansion study, paneled in fine wood with a view of the sea. Tiago, I need the best private investigator in the city. I want to know everything about Elena Souza, the nurse at the municipal hospital in Sanjay's. Everything, where she lives, family, education, financial situation, professional reputation. I want to know what kind of person she is, if she has children, if she's married, what her dreams are. Tiago jotted it all down in his notebook but was clearly concerned. Arthur, are you sure you didn't hit your head harder than you think? This sounds like obsession. It's not obsession, Tiago. It's gratitude and strategy. This woman has what our company desperately needs. What exactly? Genuine integrity. She risked her job to help a stranger everyone else saw as trash. People like that are rare. Tiago knew Arthur well enough to understand that once he decided something, it was best not to argue. All right, I'll call Daniel Costa. He's the best investigator we know. And Tiago, I want quick results. If she's suffered for helping me, I need to know today. While Tiago made the call, Arthur took a long shower and put on clean clothes for the first time in 3 days. In the bathroom mirror, he barely recognized himself. 3 days on the streets had changed his perspective on many things, especially what truly matters in life. Daniel Costa arrived at the mansion in the evening, bringing state-of-the-art equipment and a small but efficient team. He was a 50-year-old man with gray hair who had worked in federal police before opening his own detective agency. Mr. Montero, I can do a full job in 48 hours, but I need to clarify if this is for legal or personal purposes. Both. Daniel, I need absolute confidentiality. If any information from this investigation leaks, our collaboration ends today. Daniel nodded. Working for Arthur Montero was one of his most lucrative contracts, and he wasn't about to ruin it with carelessness. While the investigation proceeded, Arthur spent the next day analyzing financial reports from the municipal hospital in Sanjay's. His company donated $500,000 annually to the institution, but the documents showed funds going to inflated purchases and salaries for ghost employees. On the second day, Daniel returned with a full dossier on Elena Souza. The data was both alarming and inspiring. Elena Souza, 29 years old, graduate of the Federal University of Fluminense, specialization in emergency care, has worked 8 years at the municipal hospital in Sanjay's. Impeccable reputation, several commendations for dedication. Daniel began, opening the folder with documents and photos. She single-handedly supports her mother, who has Alzheimer's and is in a private clinic. Her salary barely covers the treatment costs. Arthur felt a tightness in his chest. Elena was facing serious financial hardships to care for her sick mother, yet she had risked her job to help a stranger. Continue, Arthur said. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in Madureira, 2 months behind on rent. She works double shifts at the hospital and cleans houses on weekends to supplement her income. Cleans houses, huh? On Saturdays and Sundays, she works as a cleaner in homes in the upscale neighborhoods to make ends meet. Arthur clenched his fists. A qualified, dedicated, honest nurse forced to work as a cleaner on weekends, while slackers like Mateus drew fat salaries for humiliating subordinates. There's more. Yesterday, she was fired from the hospital. Arthur's blood ran cold. Fired how? Dismissal with cause. Official reason: insubordination and misuse of hospital resources. She was called to the director's office yesterday morning and fired immediately. Daniel showed a copy of the order. Elena had lost her job for helping him. It was a blatant, outrageous injustice. Where is she working now? As a cleaner in an office building downtown. She got the job yesterday through a friend, earning 1/3 of her previous nurse's salary. Arthur stood and paced the office. Elena was paying too high a price for doing the right thing, and he had the power to change it all. Daniel, I want you to monitor her situation. Any problem, any difficulty, report it immediately. Mr. Montero, may I ask what the plan is? Arthur looked out the window at the blue sea stretching to the horizon. The plan is to restore justice, Daniel, and perhaps find someone who can help me completely overhaul our donation strategy to public hospitals. That night, Arthur couldn't sleep. He sat on the mansion's veranda, watching the city lights and thinking of Elena. She was out there somewhere, probably worrying about debts and an uncertain future. And it was all because of him, because she did what any medical professional should do. The next morning, Arthur made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Tiago, prepare the car. We're going to inspect several office buildings downtown. Any specific business? I'm going after the cleaner who needs to learn who she really saved that night in the hospital. Elena was on her knees on the 12th floor of the Presidente Vargas building, furiously scrubbing the marble floor, channeling all her frustration into each stroke. 3 days had passed since the unfair dismissal, and she still couldn't believe how quickly her life had collapsed. 8 years of impeccable service destroyed by one act of humanity. The cleaner's uniform was 2 sizes too big, borrowed from her supervisor because Elena couldn't afford her own. The rubber gloves chafed her hands, accustomed to the delicacy of medical procedures, not the rough labor of cleaning. Elena, finish this floor. We've got 3 more today, shouted Fatima, the cleaning supervisor, a 50-year-old woman who ruled the crew with an iron fist. Elena muttered, "Yes, ma'am," and continued scrubbing. The cleaner's salary was less than 1,000 reis a month, a third of what she earned as a nurse. With the costs for her mother's clinic, she no longer knew how to make ends meet. Then, confident footsteps echoed in the hallway. She looked up and saw a man in a dark blue suit approaching, accompanied by another, shorter man who looked like an assistant or bodyguard. The man in the suit appeared groomed and elegant, but there was something familiar about his face. "Excuse me," he said, stopping in front of her. "Are you Elena Souza?" Elena slowly stood, removing her dirty gloves. It was strange for someone to call her by name, especially in this building where she was just another invisible cleaner. "Yes, that's me. How can I help?" The man silently studied her for a few seconds, as if gathering courage to speak. There was something in his eyes that she recognized but couldn't pinpoint. "My name is Arthur Montero. I need to talk to you about one night at the municipal hospital in Sanjay's." Elena's blood ran cold. Arthur Monteiro. She knew the name, had seen it in newspapers and business magazines. One of Rio de Janeiro's wealthiest entrepreneurs, owner of a billion-dollar business empire. But what could such a man want from her? "I'm sorry, sir, but I think you're mistaken. I worked at the hospital until recently, but I don't remember treating anyone by that name." Arthur smiled, and that's when Elena recognized the eyes, the smile. Even clean, groomed, with the air of a millionaire, he was the same man she had helped that cursed night. "You recognize me, don't you?" he asked softly. Elena's legs buckled. It can't be. The homeless, injured man she had aided was Arthur Montero, one of the country's richest people. It made no sense. I don't understand," she stammered, leaning against the wall. "You saved my life that night, Elena. You cleaned me, bandaged me, treated me like a human when everyone saw me as trash, and you were fired for it." The words hit Elena like a punch to the gut. She sank to the floor, unable to process what she'd heard. The man she had helped at the cost of her job and career was a billionaire in disguise. "This can't be," she whispered, covering her face with her hands. Arthur knelt beside her, ignoring the dirt on the hallway floor soiling his expensive suit. "Elena, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm here to explain everything and right the injustice you've suffered because of me." "You were investigating the hospital," Elena said, as the puzzle pieces began to fit. "That's why you were undercover." "Exactly," he replied. "We received complaints about mismanagement in hospitals receiving donations from my company, and I decided to investigate personally. Elena lifted her head, looking at him with a mix of shock and anger. You let me lose my job, knowing you could have prevented it. You lay there, pretending to be unconscious, while I was humiliated. The accusation stabbed Arthur like a knife. Elena, I wanted to reveal myself right then, to protect you, but if I had, the whole investigation would have been ruined. I didn't think they'd fire you. Of course they would fire me, Elena exploded, standing abruptly. You don't know that place. Mateus had been looking for any excuse to hurt me for months. Fatima appeared in the hallway, drawn by the shouts. Elena, what's this conversation? You're working. Arthur turned to the supervisor with such natural authority that she instinctively stepped back. Please give us a few minutes. This is an urgent discussion. And who are you to give orders here? Fatima retorted, but without much conviction. Arthur Montero of GR Holdings, owner of this building. Fatima's face paled instantly. She knew the name, knew GR Holdings owned the building where she worked. I'm sorry, Mr. Montero. I didn't know. No problem. I just need a few minutes alone with Elena. Fatima hurried away, leaving them alone again. Elena watched the scene with growing resentment. All it took was Arthur saying his name, and people bowed before him. That was the power of money. Elena, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but let me explain why I'm here. To ease your conscience? Elena asked sarcastically. To offer you an opportunity that could change your life, and to restore justice. Elena crossed her arms, keeping her distance. What kind of opportunity? Arthur took a deep breath. First, I want you to know I have proof that your dismissal was completely unfair. I have recordings, documents showing the corruption scheme in the hospital, and I can get you reinstated today if you want. Second, I want to offer you a position in my company as head of the Social Responsibility Department for Healthcare. Salary of 15,000 reais a month, full medical insurance, paid meals, and a special project to overhaul how we handle donations to public hospitals. Elena was silent for a long time, pondering the offer. 15,000 was more than 10 times what she earned as a cleaner and 3 times her nurse's salary. It was money that would cover her mother's treatment without scraping by, allowing her to live with dignity. Why are you doing this? She asked suspiciously. Because I admire who you are. Because I need honest people around me. Because you proved you do the right thing, even when it costs you dearly. And you think you can buy my conscience with a high salary? The question caught Arthur off guard. It's not about buying your conscience, Elena. It's about giving you a chance to make changes on a much larger scale. Elena shook her head, still processing. Arthur, you don't understand. It's not about the money, it's about dignity. You let me be humiliated. Let me lose my job. Let me go through all this when you could have stopped it. Elena, Elena raised her hand, interrupting him. You have no idea what I've been through these 3 days. Calls from collectors. The shame of borrowing money. My mother's look, asking why I'm so sad. Arthur felt the weight of guilt pressing on his chest. He had been so focused on the investigation that he hadn't fully considered the consequences for Elena. You're right. I was selfish. I thought only of the investigation, not of you. There was no excuse for that. The sincerity in his voice made Elena waver. She saw genuine remorse in his eyes, not convenient guilt. What do you really want from me? She asked more calmly. Partnership. I want you to help me create a real oversight system in the hospitals receiving our donations. I want you to be my eyes and ears because you know the reality of the people working there. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision. But I'll still use the evidence to overturn your dismissal and sue the hospital for moral harassment. Elena looked around. The dirty hallway where she worked, the bucket of murky water, the baggy uniform that made her feel invisible. Then she looked at Arthur, elegant in his expensive suit, offering a chance to regain her voice, significance, and the ability to truly make a difference. I need to think about it, Elena said finally. Of course. How much time do you need? A couple of days. And Arthur, if I agree, it'll be on my terms. No special privileges, no protection. If I fail, Fire me like anyone else. Arthur smiled. That's exactly the response I expected from you. He pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. My personal number. Call when you decide. And if I don't agree, then you'll return to work as a nurse at the hospital with a raise and the assurance that those who persecuted you will pay for it. Elena took the card, feeling the fine paper between her fingers. Why should I trust you after everything that's happened? Arthur paused before answering. Because even injured, even beaten on the street, even risking the investigation, I'll never forget how you treated me that night. You saved me, Elena, not just physically. You reminded me that true kindness still exists in the world. Elena tucked the card into her uniform pocket. I'll think about your offer, but Arthur, if this is just to clear your conscience, forget it. It's not about my conscience. It's about doing the right thing. Finally, Elena returned to work, but her mind was far away. Arthur left the building but lingered on the sidewalk for a few minutes, watching through the windows as Elena resumed mopping the floor. Tiago, who had been silent the whole time, approached. Well, boss, did she agree? Not yet, but she will. She just needs time to think. Why are you so sure? Arthur cast one last glance at the building before getting into the car. Because she's like me, Tiago. She can't turn down a chance to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Elena spent 2 full days unable to shake the conversation with Arthur from her mind. She continued working as a cleaner, but every movement was mechanical, automatic. Her thoughts raced between anger at what she'd endured and curiosity about the offer she'd received. On the evening of the second day, she finally mustered the courage to call Arthur. It was nearly 10 p.m. When she dialed the number from the card, her hands trembled slightly.
Elena.
Arthur's voice sounded surprised yet relieved.
Arthur.
Can I talk to you? Of course. Do you want to speak now? Or would you prefer we meet in person? Elena took a deep breath. I want to see the evidence you mentioned, about my dismissal, about the hospital. Excellent. You can come to my office tomorrow morning, or I can come to you. I'd prefer to come to you. I want to see with my own eyes who you really are. Arthur dictated the address of GR Holdings headquarters in Barra de Tijuca. Elena scribbled it on a crumpled piece of paper. She was still in her cleaner's uniform, not yet home. The next morning, Elena woke before her alarm, choosing her best clothes. Black dress pants and a simple white blouse she wore to interviews. It wasn't as elegant as what she imagined Arthur's employees wore, but it was the best she had. GR Holdings headquarters was a 20-story glass building occupying an entire block. Elena felt overwhelmed just looking at it from the sidewalk. These were 2 completely different worlds, hers and Arthur's. At reception, a sleek, elegant blonde greeted her with a professional smile. Good morning. How can I help? I have an appointment with Arthur Montero.
Elena Souza.
The receptionist checked the schedule on her computer. Ah yes, Elena. Mr. Montero is expecting you. 19th floor, elevator on the right. In the elevator, Elena stared at her reflection in the mirror. Even in neater clothes, she felt out of place in this atmosphere of luxury and power. People entering and exiting the elevator wore expensive suits, carried leather briefcases, and spoke of millions as if they were pennies. Arthur's office occupied half the 19th floor. Elena was met by his secretary, Carla, a middle-aged woman with a soft, almost maternal expression that immediately put her at ease. Elena, how nice to finally meet you. Mr. Montero has spoken a lot about you. He's on a video conference but will finish in 5 minutes. Elena sat in an expensive leather chair and surveyed the surroundings. Paintings on the walls, panoramic city view, furniture worth more than her annual salary. It was striking how Arthur had hidden all this wealth when undercover as a vagrant.
Elena.
Arthur's voice brought her back to reality. He stood in the office doorway in a light gray suit, with a sincere smile.
Arthur.
Come in, please. Thank you for coming. His personal office was even more impressive. A massive mahogany desk, shelves full of books and awards, leather sofas around a coffee table neatly stacked with newspapers and magazines. "Sit here." Arthur pointed to one of the armchairs. "Coffee? Water? Anything?" "Water, please." Arthur poured water into a crystal glass and sat in the armchair beside her, not behind his massive desk. Elena noticed the gesture. He was trying to bridge the status gap. "Elena, before showing you the evidence, I want you to know. I understand your anger, why you don't trust me. If I were in your place, I'd feel the same." "Arthur, I'll say it straight," Elena began. "All my life, I believed that doing the right thing was enough. That if I was honest, dedicated, competent, I'd be recognized. And suddenly, I realized the world doesn't work that way." Arthur nodded. "You're right. The world is often unfair, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying to change it. It's easy to say that when you have billions in the bank." Her remark hit home. Arthur understood the privileges his wealth afforded him, but he also knew it didn't diminish the value of his feelings and intentions. "Elena, can I tell you something? I wasn't born rich. My father was a metal worker, my mother a seamstress. I built all this because I got opportunities many don't have, and now I want to use my position to create opportunities for others." Elena watched him, searching for signs of lies or manipulation, but his voice held sincerity, a vulnerability she hadn't expected. "Show me the evidence," she said finally. Arthur stood and retrieved a thick folder from a cabinet. "Elena, what you're about to see might be upsetting. There are recordings, documents, proof of a corruption scheme that goes much deeper than you think." He placed the folder on the coffee table and opened it. Inside were dozens of documents, photos, transcribed conversations, and a tablet with audio files. "Starting with the recording from that night when you helped me." Arthur pressed play on the tablet. Elena heard her own voice defending the need for humane treatment. She heard Mateus ordering not to waste supplies on a vagrant. She heard the colleagues' malicious comments. Listening to it all again was painful and humiliating. "How did you get these recordings?" "I was conscious most of the time, recording everything on my phone. I wanted proof of how vulnerable patients are treated in the hospital." The recording continued, and Elena heard the conversation in the director's office where her fate was decided. Mateus, the administrative director, and two others she didn't know discussed how to get rid of her. "She's asking too many questions. If we let her slide, others will think they can break orders too," Mateus's voice said. "Fire her with cause," another replied. "Insubordination. It's the easiest, and she can't contest it." Elena felt nauseous at how casually they'd ruined her career, as if she were just an administrative nuisance. "There's more," Arthur said, laying out documents. "Here's proof of embezzlement. Medications purchased but never delivered to the hospital. Equipment at inflated prices. Fictitious employees on the payroll." Elena scanned the papers. Hundreds of thousands of reis vanished monthly into someone's pockets. Money meant to save lives enriched corrupt officials. Mateus is involved in all this. He's the right-hand man of the scheme. He fires honest employees like you and hires those loyal to the system. That's why your dismissal happened so fast. You were a threat to them." Elena leaned back in her chair, digesting the information. "And now? What are you going to do with this?" "It depends on you." "In what sense?" Arthur leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with determination. "Elena, I can hand all this to the federal police and prosecutors. The corrupt will be jailed, you'll be reinstated, compensated. Justice will prevail, but it won't change the system. In a few months, new corrupt officials will replace the arrested ones. Other honest employees will face repression again. The problem remains." Elena began to understand where he was going. "And your proposal is to turn Sanjay's hospital into a model of transparent management and humane care. Use our influence and resources to create a system that actually works. And we need someone who knows the inside reality to lead it." "You're talking about me?" "I'm talking about us as partners. You with practical knowledge, me with resources and political influence." Elena stood and walked to the window, gazing at the city panorama. Below, millions lived their lives, facing hardships, needing a functioning healthcare system. Arthur, if I agree to this, for me it won't just be a job. It'll be a personal mission. I hope it will be. That's what will make us succeed. Elena turned to him. And if we fail, if the system is too rotten to fix, then at least we'll fail trying to do the right thing. And that's more than most people do. Those words touched something deep inside Elena. It was what she had always believed but began doubting after the unfair dismissal. I have one condition, she said finally. What? I want to return to the hospital as a nurse first, work a few months in the department before taking any administrative role. I want everyone to see I'm not just another manager who's never worked with their hands. Arthur smiled. Excellent. Elena, there's something else I need to tell you. About your mother, I know about her situation, the financial struggles you're facing. If you agree to work with us, the corporate health insurance will cover all her treatment costs without deductibles or copays. Elena's eyes stung with tears. Caring for her mother had been a constant in her life, a heavy burden she'd carried alone for years. Why are you doing all this? She asked. Arthur stood and approached her. Because you saved me, Elena? Not just that night in the hospital. You reminded me what really matters in life. You showed me there are still people willing to do the right thing, even when it costs dearly. Elena extended her hand. Partners. Arthur shook it with a smile. Partners. But Elena, there's something I must warn you about. From now on, our fight will be much bigger than one hospital. What we uncovered in Sanjay's is just the tip of the iceberg. We're entering a war against a corruption system that won't accept change peacefully. Elena squeezed his hand tighter. Arthur, all my life I've avoided conflicts. I think it's time to embrace one. 2 weeks later, Elena returned to the municipal hospital in Sanjay's. But this time, the situation was entirely different. She entered through the main door at 7 a.m. in a new uniform, carrying a folder of documents that would change many lives in that place. Mateus nearly choked on his coffee when he saw her walking down the hallway. He was chatting with Isabella and Lucas near the nurse's station when Elena appeared, smiling politely as if nothing had happened. Good morning, Elena said in a natural tone, placing the folder on the counter. Elena, what are you doing here? Mateus stammered, clearly panicking. Back to work. Reinstatement by court order, Elena replied, pulling a sheet of paper from the folder. The dismissal is annulled for lack of legal grounds. Here's the decision. Mateus took the document with trembling hands and scanned it quickly. It was a ruling for Elena's immediate reinstatement with all labor rights preserved and compensation for moral damages. This is a mistake, Isabella said, peering over his shoulder. You were fired for insubordination. There are witnesses. Elena smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Isabella, there are many things you don't know about that night and what happened after. The atmosphere tensed. Other staff began gathering, intrigued by the noise. News of Elena's return spread through the hospital in minutes, sparking whispers in the corridors. Dr. João Pereira, the hospital's administrative director, appeared in the hallway accompanied by 2 men in suits Elena didn't recognize. By their appearance and demeanor, she guessed they were lawyers. Ms. Elena Souza? One asked. Yes. I'm Dr. Pedro Noves, attorney for GR Holdings. We're here to oversee your reinstatement and clarify some points about the hospital's situation. Mateus paled. GR Holdings was one of the hospital's largest donors. If they'd sent lawyers, things were serious. Dr. João, can we talk privately? Dr. Pedro asked the director. Of course. Let's go to my office. Before leaving, Dr. João looked at Elena with a mix of confusion and anxiety. Elena, welcome back. Mateus will brief you on the work schedule. When the director and lawyers departed, Mateus turned to Elena with a hostile expression. Elena, I don't know what game you're playing, but you won't intimidate me. I have the administration's support. Mateus, I'm not here to intimidate anyone. I'm here to work as a nurse, as I've always done. But Elena knew this polite exchange was just the beginning. In the folder she held were the proofs gathered by Arthur. In a few hours, the situation in this place would change radically. Lucas approached, clearly nervous. Elena, listen. About that night, sometimes we say things in the heat of the moment that don't reflect what we really think. Lucas, everyone is responsible for their own words and actions, Elena replied calmly, organizing her work materials. Elena was assigned to the night shift, exactly the same time when it all began. It was ironic but symbolic. She was returning to the place where she'd been humiliated, but now with power she hadn't had before. During her shift, Elena attended patients, gave injections, demonstrated the professional competence that had always been hers. But she noticed colleagues watching her with curiosity mixed with caution. Something had changed and everyone felt it. Around 10 p.m., security brought in a homeless man, dirty, with wounds. Elena saw the scene like déjà vu. But this time, everything was different. She approached without hesitation. "What's wrong with him?" she asked the guard. "Street fight. He's semi-conscious," one replied. Elena quickly assessed the man. Superficial wounds, but needing cleaning and bandaging. She looked around and saw everyone watching, waiting for her reaction. "Isabella, help me take him to the procedure room?" Isabella hesitated, glancing at Mateus, but something in Elena's confident posture made her agree. "Of course, Elena." Together, they treated the patient quickly and with care. Elena noticed Isabella working silently but with genuine dedication. It seemed Elena's presence was restoring to the work environment what had once been lost. At 2 a.m., the situation exploded. Dr. Joao returned to the hospital accompanied by new faces: federal police agents, Ministry of Justice prosecutors, auditors from the main control office. The hospital was fully sealed for investigation. "Mateus Silva, you are under arrest for participation in a criminal organization, embezzlement, and bribery," said a federal delegate, showing the arrest warrant. Mateus's face turned as white as paper. "This is persecution. I haven't done anything. We have recordings of you negotiating the theft of medications and firing honest employees," the delegate replied, signaling the other agents. Isabella and Lucas watched in shock. In minutes, the man who had ruled the department with an iron fist was in handcuffs. Other staff crowded the hallways, whispering and trying to understand what was happening. "Elena," Isabella approached, her voice trembling. "Did you know this would happen?" "I knew justice would prevail one day," Elena replied calmly. "How? Who helped you?" Elena looked at her colleague, who had participated in her humiliation just weeks ago. "Someone who believes doing the right thing is still worth it." Dr. Joao was summoned for questioning, clearly nervous. Other employees involved in the scheme were also detained. The police operation was precise like surgery. They knew whom to arrest and where to find evidence. A young nurse named Larissa approached Elena. "Elena, I've always admired how you treated patients. I never understood why they fired you." "Larissa, sometimes doing the right thing comes at a high price, but it's always worth it." The next morning, newspapers were ablaze with news of the operation dismantling the corruption scheme at the municipal hospital in San Jose. Elena's name was mentioned as the employee who reported the irregularities. She felt mixed emotions, pride and anxiety. The hospital was in uproar. Staff gathered in small groups, discussing the arrests, speculating about the institution's future. Fear hung in the air, but with it, a sense that the truth had finally come out. Arthur arrived at the hospital around noon, accompanied by a team of auditors and consultants. He was in a dark suit, the stance of a man accustomed to handling complex situations. "Elena," he greeted her formally in front of the other staff. "How are things here?" "Stable. Patients are being cared for. The team is adjusting." Many employees watched the conversation, clearly intrigued by Elena's acquaintance with this influential entrepreneur. Whispers echoed through the hallways. Dr. Joao approached, clearly nervous. "Mr. Montero, I want to assure you that the hospital is fully cooperating with the investigation. Doctor, as of today, San Jose Hospital will operate under new management. GR Holdings is taking temporary leadership with approval from the Ministry of Health." This news caused a stir among the staff. Elena knew it was part of the plan, but seeing it unfold still amazed her. It was the complete reform this place so desperately needed. Elena Souza will be our nursing coordinator, responsible for implementing new humane care protocols, Arthur announced. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena, recently fired as a problem employee, was now elevated to the highest nursing position. The turnaround was so dramatic that many couldn't process it. Isabella approached Elena with pleading eyes. "Elena, I know I made mistakes. I was mean to you that night, but I need this job. I have children." Elena looked at her former colleague, remembering the humiliations she'd endured, but also recalling her own principles and who she chose to be. "Isabella, everyone deserves a second chance. If you've truly changed, there'll be a place for you in the new team." Tears glistened in Isabella's eyes. "Thank you, Elena. I swear, I'll prove I deserve it." Lucas approached too, clearly remorseful. "Elena, that night I acted like an idiot. No excuses for my behavior." "Lucas, what's important now is building an atmosphere where all patients are treated with dignity. Are you ready to be part of that?" "I am, of course. And Elena, I want to apologize publicly to everyone." Elena was touched by his sincerity. "Lucas, no need. The main thing is to move forward." In the following days, the hospital's transformation proceeded rapidly and deeply. Repair crews worked nights, updating facilities that had decayed for decades. New equipment arrived daily: cardiac monitors, ventilators, state-of-the-art ultrasound machines. Elena worked tirelessly, splitting time between direct patient care and overseeing administrative changes. It was exhausting, but she had never felt so professionally fulfilled. She implemented new care protocols, created staff training programs, established direct communication channels between employees and administration, and most importantly, introduced a zero-tolerance policy for patient discrimination based on social status. A month after the police operation, Elena was finishing her shift when she saw a man slowly walking down the emergency hallway. He was dirty, clearly homeless, with wounds on his arm, blood seeping through torn clothes. "Excuse me," Elena approached gently. "Do you need medical help?" The man looked at her suspiciously. "I don't have money to pay here. No one pays here. This is a public hospital. Come, we'll take care of your wounds." Elena led him to the procedure room, carefully cleaned the wounds, and applied a professional bandage. Throughout, other staff came in and greeted the patient with respect. The cultural shift was evident. "Nurse," the man said when she finished, "it's been a long time since I was treated like a human." "Thank you." Elena smiled, recalling another night and another patient in a similar situation. "It should always be this way. Every person who comes here deserves respect and care." "Are you special? You have a kind heart." "No, I'm not special. I'm just doing my job properly." As she left the room, she saw Arthur waiting in the hallway. He had watched the entire treatment from the door, smiling faintly. "How did you know I was here?" Elena asked. "I often come to check on things, especially during night shifts." They walked together to the hospital exit. The night was cold, but inside, everything was warmed by the humanity now permeating every corner. "Elena, I want to tell you something," Arthur said as they reached the parking lot. "In these past months working with you, I've learned a lot about courage, about what it means to do the right thing even when it's hard. You've taught me that money and power only have value when used to help others." Elena felt her heart beat faster. There was a special warmth in Arthur's voice, going beyond business partnership. "Arthur, you've taught me a lot too. You've shown me there are people willing to use their privileges for good." "Elena, can I say it straight?" "Of course." Arthur stopped and looked her in the eyes. "I'm in love with you. Not just the competent professional, but the honest, brave person who doesn't let difficulties break her." Elena felt tears sting her eyes. Over these months, she had begun feeling something for Arthur too, but feared it was just gratitude disguised as more. "Arthur, I feel the same for you, but I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that the difference in our social status will become a problem in the future. That people will think I'm with you for gain." Arthur took her hands in his. "Elena, You've already proven your character is worth more than any amount, and I've realized true love has nothing to do with a bank account." They kissed right there in the hospital parking lot where it all began. It was a kiss full of tenderness, gratitude, and promise of a future. 6 months later, Elena and Arthur married in a simple ceremony in the garden of the municipal hospital in San Jose. The celebration was open to all staff, patients, and their families. It was a festivity not just of two people's love, but of an entire system's transformation. During the party, Isabella approached Elena. "Elena, I want to thank you for giving me a second chance, for teaching me that humility and respect are part of a nurse's job. Isabella, we all make mistakes. The key is to learn and change." Lucas also came to congratulate the couple. "Elena, Arthur, thank you for showing that change is possible. After you, the hospital will never be the same." Dr. Joao, retained in his position after fully cooperating with the investigation, gave a touching toast. "Elena and Arthur, you've turned this place into a symbol of hope. You've proven that administrative efficiency can coexist with humanity in care." Larissa, the youngest nurse, approached too. "Elena, you've inspired me to never abandon my principles. Seeing how you went through all this and one gave me strength to be better in my profession." 2 years later, the municipal hospital in San Jose became a national model for humane care. Delegations from other states came to study the implemented management model, and Elena traveled the country giving lectures about her experience. After one such lecture, a young nurse approached her. "Dr. Elena, I work in a hospital where staff are mistreated and poor patients discriminated against. How can I change this reality?" Elena smiled, remembering herself years ago. "Start by doing the right thing even when no one's watching. Treat every patient like family, and never stop believing that small acts of kindness can change the world. But what if they fire me? If they persecute me? Then you'll learn that doing the right thing always brings positive consequences. Even if they don't appear right away, the truth always comes out." At the lecture exit, Arthur waited in the car. "How was it?" "Inspiring. Every story we tell, every person who decides to change something at their workplace after this, it's a victory. Elena, I have a surprise for you." "What?" Arthur handed her a folder. "Approval to expand our model to 10 more public hospitals in the state. The federal government wants to implement the San Jose protocol nationwide." Elena opened the folder and saw the official documents. It was more than she had ever dreamed, the chance to transform public healthcare on a national scale. "Arthur, this means that night when I decided to help an injured homeless man, against my boss's orders, I didn't just save a life. I planted the seeds of a revolution in Brazil's healthcare system." Elena looked out the car window at the sprawling city. Somewhere out there were other healthcare workers facing similar dilemmas. Patients mistreated, staff humiliated for doing right. But now she had the resources and influence to change that reality. "Arthur," Elena said, taking his hand, "ready for the next battle?" "Always, especially with you by my side." The car drove into the night, carrying two people who knew that true love and social justice go hand in hand, and that sometimes saving one person is the first step to saving the world. 3 years later, Elena was pregnant with their first child. She continued working at the hospital, now as General Director of Patient Care, overseeing the implementation of the San Jose protocol in hospitals across Brazil. One special day, she received a letter that deeply touched her. It was from a nurse in Salvador who had attended her lecture 2 years ago. "Dear Dr. Elena, I want to tell you that I've implemented your principles in the hospital where I work. Today, we're a model of humane care in Bahia. I saved 3 colleagues' jobs who were about to be fired for treating poor patients with dignity. Thank you for teaching me that doing the right thing is always worth it." Elena showed the letter to Arthur, and he smiled proudly. "See? One person at a time, one hospital at a time. We're changing the world. And to think it all started because I refused to leave an injured man without help," Elena said, stroking her belly. "Our child will grow up knowing that small acts of courage can change reality." That evening, Elena did a final round of the hospital before heading home. She stopped in the emergency room where it all began and watched the team at work. Now there was no discrimination, no humiliations. Every patient received equal respect and care. A young intern approached her. "Dr. Elena, we just admitted a homeless man with severe injuries. The surgery was successful. He'll live." "Excellent work, doctor." "Dr. Elena, may I ask a question?" "Of course. How did you always know it was worth fighting for what's right, even when everyone was against you?" Elena looked at the young doctor, seeing in him the same idealistic fire that once burned in her. "Because when you do the right thing out of love for your fellow human, you're not alone. You're on the side of truth, and truth always wins." The intern nodded, clearly inspired. Elena said goodbye and left the hospital, knowing she had planted another seed of hope in a young heart. Outside, Arthur waited in the car as always. "Ready to go home?" "Ready. Our family awaits us." They drove away together, leaving behind a transformed hospital, hundreds of saved lives, and the certainty that love and justice always triumph when brave people decide to change the world for the better.